All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lu Xin from CGTN. I'm host of the talk show, The Point with Lu Xin on CGTN. But today I'm not in my usual studio. I'm here in Shanghai and at a very special gathering that is the Global South and Global Modernization Academic Forum being organized by East China Normal University here in the beautiful city of Shanghai. And today we're going to talk about a 21st century new world information and communication order. It sounds like a big concept, but it's actually about a very simple question. Why do we need to hear more stories from our part of the world, and how do we make it more interesting to you, and why it matters to you? The reason why I'm mentioning this because I was speaking at a forum in Pakistan, and one of the Pakistani guests posed this question for us, for me especially. He said, give me a reason why we should listen, because we grow up listening to English-speaking media. Give me a reason why we should listen to you. And that question kind of stayed with me. I have to explain, basically, why I exist or why I do this job. As much as I don't want to do that, but I think that is not a very obvious question for a lot of people around the world, despite being quite an obvious question for a lineup of guests here. But let's get down to it, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Let me introduce the guests who will be sharing their personal stories, and mind you, they are at the forefront of this fight to get our voices out there, which is a steep uphill battle. And starting from my immediate left, Sophia Menichuk, Editor-in-Chief of RT China from RT International. Li Rong, Executive Deputy Director of the International Communications Center at Shanghai United Media Group. Akend Member, board member of Hot TV in Zambia, but also board member of Pan-Africanism Today. Mauro Ramos, correspondent in China of Workers TV Brazil. Yang Yingjie, assistant director of Shanghai Media Group International. Evelyn Levia Romero, journalist of the news agency Prensa en Latina from Cuba. We also have two commentators. They are Chen Yinan, director of the Documentary Center and professor at the School of Media and Communication at Shanghai Jiao Tong University. And last but not least, Tang Jingtai, head of the International Communication Program at the Institute for Global Communication and Integrated Media at Fudan University. So, let's not forget, we also have a fantastic array of spectators from the Global South, but also from Global North countries here present. Let's warmly welcome everybody, and a big round of applause to welcome our panelists. So our discussion will be 1.5 hour, and it will start with an opening statement from each and every one of you, and then we'll have two commentators to comment on what has been said, and then we go into a discussion. Okay, today we probably won't open for floor, but I'm sure you can exchange with each other after the discussion is over. Without much ado, shall we start with Sophia? 5 to 6 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, it is an honor to address you today on a topic that lies at the heart of our shared mission, the transformative role of media in the modern world. And it has been said many times that it is required, that we have a fundamental shift in how stories are told, and what voices are amplified, and how narratives are being narrated. And in my report today, I would like to raise a question. Is there a universal truth? Are there universal values? And is there a right side of history? But let me start with a personal story of a Russian who has become a living proof of the failure of Western propaganda. I, like our RT's editor-in-chief, Margarita Simanyan, and many other colleagues, was an exchange student in the United States. And like many other teenagers in post-USSR Russia, I was sure that the West is the prophet of civilization, the ultimate truth lies in Western values, in Western narratives. So I was beyond happy to go to the US and have the experience that I craved from watching American movies, watching MTV channel. And my first doubt about this desirability of this world occurred in the history class of an American high school, where I, to my tremendous surprise, learned that the Americans won the Second World War. Of course, I started an argument, because this is a very one-sided perspective of history, and I realized that my classmates were simply completely blindfolded and not told at all about the price that the Soviet people have paid for the victory, for peace. And this is how I first encountered American exceptionalism and saw how they actually see the world narrowly, and, to be frank, somehow with a very condescending manner. And in the years to come, I was to learn even more about it. So I would have to disprove again and again to my American friends the stories about Russia that they read in major American newspapers. And they would ask me questions like, why do you stay in Russia? Russia is so, so, and so. And I would just patiently respond that you should come to Russia. You should see it for yourself. You should stop letting American newspapers make judgment for you. But yet again, the same people were consistently telling me about the embrace the difference, not better, not worse, just different kind of narrative. So unfortunately, many global events are consistently in the same way covered from a biased perspective. The voices are ignored, the voices of the countries that the Western world refers to as peripheral. But it is often omitted that these peripheral nations are in fact vital contributors to a single interconnected world. And Western media has often shaped a distorted perception of reality and reinforced stereotypes that depicts the global South countries and ones that require guardianship, which is simply not true. And this precisely, disproving this narrative have precisely been lying at heart of RT's work. And we all seen that over the past 3 years, the Western world has shown in all its glory its readiness to embrace the difference. Bans, sanctions, public threats to those who are not ready to dance to the tune of Western propaganda. We have seen American citizen, journalist Tucker Carlson, who has been heavily criticized in the US and even called a traitor. For what? He dared to talk to Vladimir Putin. He dared to ask what his point of view is. Isn't that a crime against humanity? So it is worth acknowledging that attempts to isolate Russia in that way and Russian media don't appear as successful because even Western media confirmed that RT's influence is only growing in the Balkans, in the Middle East, in Latin America, and these restrictions to the truth, to the opinion that comes from Russian perspective is simply not working. So we can look at examples if we have time. Okay, so in October, Russia hosted the largest international forum since the inception of BRICS. It refuted claims of Russia's of its isolation on the global stage. Leaders from 36 countries participated, and it is very important to notice that as a host country, Russia did not prioritize its own security concerns or focus on Ukrainian crisis. Instead, emphasis was on issues relevant to all global South countries. We highlighted shared problems, shared solutions, and BRICS evidentially operates without a dominant leader that sets the agenda. So BRICS itself represents an alternative space, an independent space from institutions that are centered on Western interests. And our RT's goal aligns with these objectives to create an alternative, to promote a different perspective so that our audience can question more and ask, why is this so? Why are these things happening? Why is this happening in this way? So Therefore, when you genuinely listen to these points of view, to these voices, you can make better decisions. The resolving of contradictions becomes much easier. So, answering the question that I stated at the beginning, I think there absolutely is a universal value. There are universal values. We all want peace, we all want justice, we all want prosperity for our nations. But there is definitely no a universal way to achieve it. There is no universal way to look on ways how to achieve that. And there is no right side, but there is your side that one has to listen to in order to achieve global universal goals and live in the world without delusions and misconceptions and make right decisions. So as we continue this discussion today, I'm confident that this meeting will strengthen our cooperation in this field and spark new ideas and pave way for more meaningful and impactful collaborations so that together we can build a media landscape that is not only fair but also transformative and serving as a catalyst for peace, development, and unity in an increasingly interconnecting world. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for your insights and contributions.
Thank you so much, Sonia, from RT's perspective. Can we have one extra microphone, please? Is that possible? Because as a presenter, you don't want to not have a mic. That's all that we are fighting for, to have our own mic. And I would greatly appreciate if we can have an extra microphone. Next, let's invite Mr. Li Rong, Executive Deputy Director of the International Communication Center of Shanghai United Media Group, please.
大家下午好，我可以讲中文吗？
可以。It is allowed.
跟大家汇报一下，我们做国际传播，很高兴受到主办方的邀请来参加这次研讨活动。
Honored to be invited by the organizer, and I would just like to share some ideas that we have in terms of international communication. Well, first, a few words about our organization. Our organization, the International Communication Center, Shanghai United Media Group, was founded last December, but we already had an English newspaper running in Shanghai, and we also have Sixth Tone, which is under the aegis of paper.cn. And we wanted to sort of magnify the impact of our international communication and to better adapt to this new media landscape where social media has become the norm. So we basically created this Shanghai service, and we have this new brand called IP Shanghai, as well as this papers Mingcha and CNS. So we think that in order to have effective international communication, we have to have a differentiated identity. So we created an identity that is segment specific for each. So first of all, for Shanghai Daily, that is supposed to serve overseas, expatriates in Shanghai, and we hope that Sixth Tone would be the primary outlet for telling the ordinary stories, the stories of ordinary Chinese, and then CNS would become a one-stop information service platform. So that's basically our branding for each of the sub-brands under our aegis. Sixth Tone, for example, it tells the stories of ordinary people in China, and I really like one of the videos created by Sixth Tone, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it now. First of all, a differentiated positioning. We need a more diversified channel network, and we also need a more professionalized communication forces in order to get our word out there. I'd like to give you this one example of this showroom model, who tries on 500 dresses a day, and I think that this is a snapshot over what the life of a young person in China is like. And this is the story of a young
都在3点
model
半
who
准时
gets
起
up
床，很累的话就
at
3点4点半
3:30
从家
a.m.
里
in the
出发。
morning to go to CGTN, an important clothing market in Hangzhou.
我叫吴安宁，今年22岁，从事的职业是穿板模特，在 CGTN。就感觉没有说像想象中那么难，你要站在台子上，然后所有人递给你衣服，你只要穿衣服就好了，不需要去介绍。
他一天要换4、5个。
She tries on between 400 and 500 outfits there.
顾客来了，你要发现就是做什么样风格的衣服，然后给他完整的搭配好一套衣服，就是说让他拿起来更方便一点。最开心的时候就是说得到顾客认可，就是我套什么他拿什么。反应比较快一点，因为你在穿这套衣服的时候，你在心里就好搭配好另一套衣服。最快的时候也就6、7秒吧。最忙的时候，大概我一天要套500来套衣服，这样就是没停过。我一天换的衣服，可能别人一辈子都不会穿那么多。
希望各位朋友有一啊，相信自己的第一感觉啊。
所以我们这个视频。
This video was made based on the footage of following her around all day, and basically tells you a young person's approach to life, to work, and also what an ordinary Chinese person lives like.
做这一行业的话，是真的有一些压力的，我觉得。
Well, I would like to cut short the video in the interest of
So
time.
why not? Just follow me and let's have a
Now,
look.
I would like to show you another video inside the Gigafactory of Tesla.
但是我们是从
Boom! Guess where am I?
We started
Tesla
factory tour
Gigafactory in
with
Shanghai. And it's noon now. I'm quite starving. Let's get something to eat. Well, I heard that Tesla has 16 restaurants. So we took a shortcut, check out the meals recommended by Tesla food enthusiasts. 你们能介绍一下今天在吃些什么吗？
就是我们希望都是从一个
The idea is that we wanted to tell the stories of ordinary Chinese people. That is our approach to news reporting. At the same time, we wanted to have people-centered stories to craft these small but beautiful stories. And we had foreign experts helping us craft these narratives. So this is Andy, who is a New Zealander. He has a studio in Shanghai. And so this is one of the partnerships we have. We also work with Qiao Shanghai, who talks about architecture, reading Shanghai from its architecture. And Alex is an American fluent in Chinese, and he tells his stories from his own perspective. So we work with Andy, Qiao Shanghai, and Alex across all 3 partnerships. We have 3 million followers. I think I see someone who has really familiar face. Yes. And we are basically also trying to have events during important dates. For example, the Chinese import and export, the Chinese international import exhibition, and during the Chinese New Year, in sort of broadcasting our narratives so that we can spread our stories far and wide. Also, we focus a lot on training our young talent. We try to inspire our people to find their passion in international communication, and we combine training with practical experience, with externships, so that people learn foreign languages and they learn how to communicate to an international audience. While these young trainees, they speak at least 2 foreign languages.
Hi, this is Yiting Yang. Меня зовут
We
Арина
also
Якупова,
have
я
a
журналист
Russian
из Shanghai Daily.
expert, Arina, here.
所以我们觉得就是我们做好加上做过传播好，做好国际传播，还要。
We think that effective international communication requires overcoming several challenges, such as the dominance of the Western narrative, navigating cultural differences, the impact of new forms of media, as well as changes in how people consume media content. So once we do all of that, we can tell the China story well.
非常
Great.
compact. It's
Thank
very
you.
compact. Lots of information, but I'm sure you get an overview of what Shanghai United Media Group has been doing. Next, let's go to Akent from Zambia, board member of Pan-Africanism Today. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yesterday, I heard a comrade from Ghana share a story about somebody he met on the streets of Shanghai who asked him if he was from Africa. That story reminded me of my university days in the United Kingdom, both in Manchester and in London. His story contrasted with my experience in the West. I heard that question many times, but it was always followed by a question about wildlife or hunger and famine in Africa. I was almost always asked about the elephants, lions, giraffes that were thought to live in our backyards, or the famine, hunger, starvation that is televised by the BBC, Sky News, and the rest of the Western media. I never, and I must repeat, never, I never heard anyone tell the story of the years of oppression, humiliation, and subjugation that the West has imposed on Africa and the rest of the global South. I never heard anyone tell the story of the vast resources the West has stolen from the global South. But instead, every day, I witness the news and documentaries continue to humiliate us, to treat us as inferior. They portray themselves as the ones with the knowledge and resources to address the challenges of the global South, many of which they are at the center of creating and perpetuating. Yesterday, in VJ's speech, he repeatedly used the word sovereignty. And I was reminded of Samir Amin's writings on the neo-colonial structure that is built on the 5 controls: finance, natural resource, science and technology, weapons or military, and information. The question is then, how do we, as the Global South, promote and foster a new information and communication era? And how do we do this within the backdrop of the West continuing to invest heavily in media and information monopolization? The answer is to tell our own stories, to write our own history, and to provide our own analysis of global issues. And this can only be fully achieved by close collaboration within the Global South. Media, information, and data projects are primary. They become the foundation of the Global South's ability to shape a new information era, as I've heard from RT and others on this panel. Our own platforms are critical and should not be neglected. Our own media platforms allow us to counter media and communication dominance of the West. Reuters, BBC, CNN, Sky News, the New York Times, the Financial Times should not be where the Global South go to read about the Global South or even about the West. This week, the outgoing president of the US, Biden, visited Angola in sub-Saharan Africa. The president of my country, embarrassingly, in true puppet spirit, rushed to Angola to meet him. The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo also went to meet him. Let me share some of the headlines that the Western media published on this. Thousands cheer Biden's arrival in Angola for his promised sub-Saharan African visit. That was the Associated Press. The New York Times headline was Biden's visit to Africa will focus on history and economic hope. But we know why Biden visited Angola. Biden's trip to Angola this week had a focus on what the Western media has described as their legacy infrastructure project, the Libido Corridor, aimed at securing supply chains for the US on the African continent. Angola does not only have the mineral resources the United States seeks, but it also has a gateway to the critical resources in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia. They want to use the Lobito Corridor, the Lobito Port, the Banguela Rail to get the mineral resources of Congo and Zambia. It's a project to the benefit of the US to facilitate their continued exploitation of Africa, of African minerals. But they don't want the voice of the Africans to be heard, the voice of us Africans saying, hands off our minerals. And in closing, I will say, our future depends on us collaborating in the Global South to build our own information and communication apparatus, established to promote our sovereignty. We cannot and we must not continue to be dominated by neo-colonial structures of media and information built to humiliate us, built to subjugate us, and built to perpetuate imperialism. Our ideas must begin to dominate international debate.
Thank you so much, Akent. Thank you. Very important messages delivered in a very calm voice. For sure, we'll talk about some of the important questions you've raised just now. But next, let's listen to Mauri Ramos from Workers TV Brazil. Mauri, please.
Thank
Mauro.
you, Liu. 大家好. Speaking in Spanish, so if you don't understand Spanish, take your translator devices.
My name is Mauro Ramos. I come from Uruguay and I am a correspondent in China from Workers TV and Brasil de Fato, BDT. These are both media outlets from Brazil. Brasil de Fato is a media outlet over 20 years old, created by people's movements such as MST. I would like to begin with this image. I don't know if all of you know this, but it's the creation of an Uruguayan author. Its name is Inverted America, and it's related to the school from the South that he created. The author is Joaquin Torres Garcia. He said he drew this because our North is the South. This is a play on words that means that our goal is the South. Latin America is the region most further apart from China, and this has not prevented our people to establish good relations with the Asian giant in the last few decades. Exchanges in Latin American countries are part of the progress of relations. However, we are still far from what would be an ideal situation. So here in China, we have over 400 correspondents from over 210 media outlets from about 40 countries. Latin America has only 4 communications media outlets from 2 countries, myself, for TVT and BDT, also in collaboration with Telesur. We have also Evelyn here from Prensa Latina, representing Cuba, and 2 other corporate media from Brazil. So that means we are less than 2% of the media with permanent presence in China. CGTN Spanish began its operations in 2007, and it has a cooperation agreement with the Latin American Alliance for Information, which is an alliance of 22 corporate TV channels. CGTN was also recently launched in Portuguese. All of this is very important. These are initiatives that coincide and converge with ours. They are different, but they do converge. Here we can see the presence of the Alliance for Information. Historically, then, the vision that we have of China and Brazil and Latin America is entirely mediated by hegemonic media. They usually reproduce articles from agencies and media outlets of the global north, such as Bloomberg, The Economist, or agencies such as Reuters. We see then China through the lens and the agenda of the main media and Occidental agents with their headquarters in the global north. The influence of this is obvious. They tell us how to see and think about China. As many of you know, the coverage of China by this media is not necessarily adjusted to reality, but rather it is determined by the external affairs line of the countries of the global north. So these are a few of the examples of the headlines. I like using The Economist because they are quite explicit and very clear for these examples. So there's always the classic announcement of the collapse of Chinese economy in the last few years, which then became this narrative of China's slowing down and now excess of capacity. If you follow the news through only Western media, one day China is in crisis and at the following day it's in excess of capacity. This happens because one of the main goals of these hegemonic media outlets of the global north is to constantly build the mistrust of the international public towards China. These are images from Tibet. So this is the mechanism, as I mentioned before, with which hegemonic media usually work when it comes to China. There's an overall agenda that has to do with always continuing with a tone of criticism and suspicion. At any chance, be it meaningful or not, real or not, they always take advantage of any opportunity to convey these ideas. I would like to very quickly go over the example of Song Chao. We heard a little bit from a presentation, and there will be yet one more in this forum. But I wanted to mention this. Due to the success of this very popular championship in China, several media outlets wrote news on this, and one of the large international media wrote about this, but never mentioned the policies for the reduction of poverty. Now, in this case, it doesn't mean that the news itself is somehow mean-spirited, but for us in the global south, the policies of rural revitalization, rejuvenation, they are the center of the news on Sun Chao. When China eradicated extreme poverty, Xi Jinping said we need to develop more ideas to ensure that the people don't follow in extreme poverty again. So this county was, by the way, one of the last ones to leave the list of extreme poverty, had local leaders who took on the challenge of developing these ideas. And with Sun Chao, this small county with 400,000 population, they managed to receive millions of tourists in visit. This isn't just an example. It's a great case. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a great example of socialism with Chinese characteristics. So our congratulations to the leaders and the beautiful people of Shanghai. Now about what we are doing. One of our axes is to show Chinese voices and faces. The possibility of being here as a journalist allows us to do something that was essential for Latin America. It was essential to have Chinese people to be the ones doing analysis, speaking, and sharing their opinions on China. We may be the first TV channel in Latin America to have people from China regularly speaking and sharing the thoughts. They are teachers, university experts, public officials, and the people in general. Here you can see different people we've interviewed in the last year, a little bit more than a year and a half. You can see there Yan Liwei, the first Chinese person to go into space. A few more people here we have interviewed. And we know there is more people. Every day there's more people talking about China, but very often the achievements are somehow depolitized, as if having the greatest railway, high-speed railway, or all of the incredible technological advance were not part and parcel of the construction of socialism with Chinese characteristics. That is why, for us, it is essential to not hide the impact of socialism with Chinese characteristics in all of the achievements of the country. Here you can see some of the comments in all of our videos. In this video, we were talking about de-dollarization. Our audience has a lot of interest on this issue. Here we see a few comments translated into English and Chinese on a piece of news on the high-speed railway in Brazil, because it is a huge country and there's a lot of interest in this on this. And just to start closing then, this is the quote I mentioned before. One of the first articles I wrote before coming to China was about the 18th Congress. There, Xi Jinping defended Marxism as the guiding ideology, the base on which our country prospers. This is the phrase that he quoted. I thought it quite important, and it was for me very noteworthy when I first started with my coverage of China. I'd like to close saying that there is a very genuine interest from the peoples of the Global South on China, despite the efforts of the Global North to sow this climate of distrust towards China. While several of our governments show only doubt, a lot of our peoples want more and more to close the gap and tie the bonds between our countries of the Global South. Our task here is essential as media outlets of the peoples. It is evident we need to facilitate, we need to try to fill the need that is already there to build the knowledge and learning, mutual knowledge and learning between the people of the Global South.
For the important work that you have done. It's not easy, I understand. It's not easy. We'll get more to that in just a moment. Next, Yang Yingjie, Assistant Director of Shanghai Media Group International, a veteran in international communication. You have the floor, please.
First of all, I'm very happy to speak on behalf of SMG, Shanghai Media Group, and to speak here because, I want to share some of the things that we're doing, some of the experiences that we do in terms of communication. So today, we're talking about the changes in media in the 21st century. Actually, there has been tremendous changes in the media in the 21st century. First, there's no boundaries. And also, it's regardless of qualification. Everyone can participate. So actually, it's something that everyone can participate. So for South countries, and when we communicate in a world dominated by global North media, so this provides a slightly better environment to do communication. So this year, in terms of media communication, we really focus on the headline project, which means sending our journalists to all over the world. When our president, when some major summits take place, like G20, G7, BRICS summit, when these big events take place, we need to have Chinese voices in these places. This is very important. So in recent years, we have been doing this series, which is called Why China. We discovered that so when these things take place, there will be some voices or stories in the Western media. They will focus on these things. For example, last year, during the Xi and Biden summit meeting in Facebook and in YouTube, there's a secret code to data. That is the red flag car. So Xi Jinping introduced this Chinese-made red flag car to Biden. So it generated a lot of traffic online. So we did a story on the car. So behind it, it's actually the story of Chinese production and Chinese self-reliance. For example, when President Xi met with Putin, he told Putin something. He taught Putin how to do these baozi, which are little buns. So this shows the story of Chinese food sovereignty. When our First Lady visited other countries, she always dressed very nice. So behind it, it's the story about Chinese sceneries and mountains and rivers. So we think that when our President and our First Lady visited other countries, it would give us a lot of traffic-generating stories, and this is good for the West to listen. So she visited China because she wanted us to send another pair of pandas to the U.S. and we can tell the panda diplomacy story on it. So in Shanghai is a city that links China with the world. We always say that we want our voices to be heard, and I So I mentioned that in the world dominated by algorithm, what we fear most is that our voice is not heard. And then we also fear that our voice is not included in a algorithm. If it's not included in the algorithm, then it's less likely that your voice is going to be heard. So that's why we want to voice more voices so that we can be heard. So actually, this one shows that we have a lot of big forums in Shanghai, just like the one for today, Global South Academic Forum. We have a lot of scholars and experts coming here. So we want to use this opportunity and voice our voices. So this is actually another forum held last year. This has generated a lot of attention overseas, and it has reached a lot of international audience. And this year we actually received a Honduran delegation visiting Shanghai. Whether we do English or our English and Chinese report on the Honduran delegation generated a lot of attention, and we really thank you guys. And also we want our voices to be heard by more people. So these are some of the reports that we've had. So with the 144-hour visa-free hour policy, we have a lot of international tourists coming to China. We want to use all these opportunities to conduct human people-to-people communication. Right now, we focus on many mainstream media to voice our voices. Another thing is that we want to go where the audience is. Actually, starting from last year, the Shanghai foreign language channel was moved to YouTube, and it has been running for over a year. In the latter half of this year, we want to move our entire channel into the terminal end. So in today's world, especially in China, fewer and fewer people are watching TV. So we need to think, how do we do communication? So in the past few years, if we were doing, let's say, news, then right now we are doing communication. So we moved our major channel to X, to Facebook, to Twitter, to YouTube. So we hope that on these channels, we can target more on the overseas audience. And this is actually a 24-hour stream on Shanghai. This one is a Shanghai Plus platform. We communicate with many overseas major media channels, and we exchange content, and we just show them on this channel. And another one is Shanghai Meet. So it's just like today, we invite many media friends, and we also actively participate in other media platforms so that we can broaden our friend circle.
Last year, we had some communication with regards to the BRI, and we actually had a lot of discussions with you, Liu Xin, about how we should tell the story of BRI. And I think we should take the approach of not what China is getting out of BRI, but what we are bringing, what we're giving to the local communities through BRI. And only when something that creates a common value can this project go far. And this actually went viral on the internet this year. It is called China's Crazy. This is China, and that those are some tourism focused video after the 144-hour visa-free policy. So these are some of the also a snapshot of events.
Thank you so much. We've all done so much work that there's barely enough time to list them. But anyway, the gist we got, really marvelous. Next, let's hear from our colleague from Cuba, Evelyn Leiva Romero, who's journalist with the press agency Prensa Latina.
It is a pleasure for me to be here representing Prensa Latina. It was quite moving to see the video at the beginning showing one of the main scourges in the country, which is the blockade. And I would like to talk about the experience of Prensa Latina as a media outlet. It is the main media outlet in Cuba. It was founded in 1959 by journalist Massetti, and since its beginning, it always stated that in journalism we can be objective but not impartial. Because of that is that we cannot be impartial between evil or wrong and correctness, and we are consolidated at the service of the truth, having an agenda focused on being objective, and we do not follow the agenda of the great media outlets that always influence us with their message. Prensa Latina is an international agency focusing on the Caribbean and Cuba. It also shows the issues going through Africa, Asia, to make the voices of those countries more visible. Sometimes they do not have the opportunity of speaking out in the traditional media outlets. Prensa Latina is the only media outlet in Cuba. It is a country affected by unilateral measures and a genocide blockade by states that support terrorism, and blockade is something real. And I have to say that the blockade affects the people of Cuba. In the last year, as an agency, we have faced challenges of various kinds, and we had to make changes as a media outlet because of economic problems and the progress of technology in the international media arena. And we have to look for alternatives and options in order to face issues such as cybersecurity. Our YouTube channel was hacked by a US company as a way of stopping the gradual growth of the country and the scope of its message. This is just an example of communicational war that as an agency and country we have to wage on a daily basis, a war that we have to wage against media outlets supported by new technologies that try to colonize their truth, their message, and in that vein they try to influence and colonize international public opinion in favor of their interests from each of the media platforms. In face of these challenges, it is essential to strengthen cooperation among the media, especially those focused on the Global South. And we need to take concrete actions such as expanding media collaboration, establishing alliances among media outlets, sharing our information in other languages with other countries and regions, and foster high-level dialogues. Developing countries, including China, should promote opportunities so that the countries in the Global South who lack access or technology can make these policies more inclusive so that there are more opportunities, so that technology, artificial intelligence, big data, and the ways of doing things may reach all the countries who lack this technology. And this could allow them to be more inclusive. It is necessary to incorporate to these dynamics the countries of the Global South. This is essential to provide a response to the current challenges. From the diversity of our civilizations, we have to join efforts and work together in synergies based on mutual respect and opposing the law of the strongest in a complex international panorama as a weapon to position the voices of the Global South. In the midst of economic difficulties, Prensa Latina has launched a multilingual platform, Voices of the Global South, including more than 100 media outlets from all over the world, and we invite everyone present to join this initiative. Spaces such as this forum contribute to foster cooperation and the exchange between media representatives to have a dialogue face-to-face and create strong alliances amplify the reach of our message, reaching more audiences and contributing to peace, security, and the development of humanity. We hope that once this forum is over, we go back to our countries with new projects to implement opportunities for cooperation and strategic alliances. The issues that for many Global South countries pose a challenge for others, this is a challenge that has been overcome. So we have to learn from their experience, and we should take advantage of these meetings to develop strong and sustainable cooperation over time.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. Thank you. Yes, that call for uniting us and learning from each other, be stronger together, is so important and the central message here. Next, we have two commentators who will make some comments based on the opening statement. Would you also observe the time limit, please? 5 to 6 minutes maximum to each of you. Thank you. Ms. Chen Yinan first.
Thank you, Liu Xin. And 今天我们的这个题
Thank you, Liu Xin.
刚才因为听到我们6位
I was just listening attentively to our 6 media representatives, and I think that I can sum it up in 3 words. And I also think that these 3 words are key to telling our own stories. First, that is to respond. Second is to break through. And third is to construct. Well, as I heard people's different stories, I think that they do have one thing in common. We are trying to speak back. We're trying to respond to the narratives crafted by Western-dominated media in our own ways and in our own voice. In that process, we are trying to break through the narratives, and some of them are distortions by Western-dominated media. Paper.cn, they have this program called Peng Pai Mingcha, which is about investigative journalism. And they have these series about Explain China that just addresses misinformation and disinformation about China that exist in the international media. And the idea is that we mount a coherent response to their narrative. Over the past 10 years, we can also see the evolution of the media landscape in China and how we respond to Western narratives. Look at how we responded to the China threat theory. I used to work in media, so I can testify firsthand how we have changed. While each country has its own path of modernization, every country has a unique story, and there's no one set of narrative in which all of our stories can fit. So this becomes a journey of exploration where every country tries to find its own context of narrative. We're just talking about, for example, with this Why China series. And I think we also have to address the question of why listen to me. When we try to broadcast what our country is like, we also have to think about, from the audience point of view, why should they listen to us? So I think that in addition to sharing our opinion, we can also share our experiences and success stories. And these do not exist in a vacuum because we are dealing with shared problems in the world. And if we have our success stories, that can also inspire other countries. One example, selecting topics of our reporting. For Global South and for Global North, there are issues of common concern, such as the environmental protection question. For example, technology, for example, the economy. These are issues that bring people together. I think the most important thing here is about how we process and respond to these questions, these problems in our modernization. We heard the story of the village super league, of the soccer league in a rural village in Guizhou. I actually visited there last year. Well, there was this idea of filming stories of poverty alleviation, and we actually did our own filming last year by covering the bridges in Guizhou. Well, Guizhou story has sort of gone viral in the past year, not just because we have these video platforms, but also because of the multiplier effect of building bridges. Because when you build bridges, you connect roads, and then the region is much more interconnected, and people can travel thousands of miles to actually watch this village super league or to know what's going on inside the region.
Different perspectives are in this global south are unique and valuable. So under this topic, we need to find our own perspective to tell the stories, and I think this is very interesting. Another thing is that we need to tell more the reasons for the complex themes behind each country. I have a very good example. We were doing the shooting, and you know that in China we have the Poyang Lake, and the Chinese government issued a policy, that's the fish banning regulation, because it's related to the biodiversity in that area. So in this process, in Poyang Lake, around it there were around 100,000 fishermen living there who relied on fishing for their livelihood. So when this ban was issued, the local people, how could they make a living? So at first we thought this was a difficult story to shoot, but later we discovered that when you want to tell a good story, it's not only about telling a good story, because telling a story doesn't equal to telling a good story. You have to tell the reason behind the story. So that I think this is very important. We also sincerely interviewed many of the entrepreneurs, fishermen, and the regulating body, how they coordinatedly did the work around the fishing ban. They talked about their dismay and their difficulties. And so I think the most fascinating story is the story like this. So these are some of the reflections that I have after listening to them.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. I can tell that you have done a lot. You have thought a lot about these questions, but you know, which one to share, which one to highlight? Indeed, it's the same dilemma for me. But we'll continue. Tang Jingtai, head of International Communication Program of an Institute for Global Communication and Integrated Media, Fudan University. Please share with us your comments, having heard the opening statements.
Okay, I'm very honored to be invited here, and I'm also very honored to have this opportunity to listen to your insights. So in this panel, after our guests shared their stories, and I have deeper understanding on many things. First, I discovered that in terms of information communication order, the Global South countries have a shared community. For example, we talked about the Africa story, Brazilian story, Russian story. So through all these stories, I discovered that in the mainstream communication order, there are many folded space and information. So we have seen many things that were not able, that were hard for us to understand. For example, the livelihoods of people in some countries, and also their history of being pillaged. So all these stories are presented to us. So this actually highlights the importance of establishing a new information communication order, and it's the value of doing so, especially under the context of an information age, an internet age. We need to understand that constructing a fairer and more just international communication order and its values. And right now, you can see that information flow actually utilizes its role, and the role is getting bigger and bigger. it goes beyond the scope of traditional soft power. So it relies on the internet to attract people's attention, and it shapes people's recognition and understanding. And it's very likely to have corresponding people to do these things. So information now has this foresight or guidance role. It can actually affect the flow of goods and the flow of people, and it's a positive influence. So under this background, if the information order is unjust, then it will also have influence on world innovation and on the flow of goods. So it will impose obstacles to that. So under this context, I think in terms of the current, we need to have a better, more accurate grasp of the current information communication order. And just as many of the speakers have shared with us, we are able to unite, and we need to unite all these marginalized people, and it would be better for creating a just information communication order that benefits all mankind. So we actually did some corresponding work for this. Recently, we took some data from mainstream media. We did a sample of 200 major mainstream media, and today there is one present. In the 200 samples, I think let's just talk about the domestic ones. And on Facebook, based on our data, China, they ranked among the top 10 in the world in the year 2023. We also used X, formerly known as Twitter. We used the interaction relations on Twitter, on X, to analyze the rules of information flow. So based on our sample data, Latin America has 100% of the information flow within that area. For sub-Saharan Africa, it's also mostly the information flow basically happens there. And for East Asia, information flows takes place. 90% of information flow takes place in East Asia. So you can see when it comes to information flow, we lag far behind in terms of the flow of goods and people. So this shows that in the future, when we reshape the global information system, we really have huge room for potential collaboration. And through your sharing, we learned the importance of this. So I think in constructing an information communication order, we really have vast space that awaits us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tang. You have brought the discussion to a whole different level, and it's very, very inspiring. And I'm very happy that you talk about the gap between the flow of information and the flow of personnel, the flow of goods. I'm sure all of us, more or less, have thought about these questions. How can we do better? How can we reach further and wider to a wider audience? You know, in preparing for this forum, I have listed so many questions, and I don't know which one to start, honestly. You know, and which one will be the most pertinent, most relevant. But let's start from this one. I'm going to ask this one. From a personal perspective, speaking from your personal experiences, what have you learned the most from your career so far, trying to break the information monopoly of mainstream Western media or Western legacy media? What have you learned? How has that transformed you, broadened your perspective, enriched your understanding on this world? Because I think that is fundamentally what's going to make it relevant for our viewers as well, the kind of value that we can bring to them by helping them expanding their horizon. Whoever would like to... Sophia, you want to start first? Go ahead.
This is a very deep question, and I don't have such a long career as our peers here, so I'll be humble, but I'll start. In my relatively short career, I learned writing in Russian about China for Russian people and vice versa I learned that it's actually very difficult to break stereotypes. Stereotypes, they do not come from nothing. There are some things to them, and it's very difficult to work with these ideas that formed somehow and they are present. So sometimes you maybe need to maybe play with them a little. So you don't have to like break them like in your face. This is not true. This is not how you should think about us. But you should probably go like be a little more creative about working with them and not just.
Do you want to give an example if you can think of it on the top of your mind now?
Yeah, I can. Well, let's maybe start with the stereotypes about Chinese people, because many people in Russia, somehow they still think that China is not as developed as it is now. There has not been a lot of work done in the media to inform people about that. So I recently even learned, well, me as a person who lived in the Far East, I know how China developed. I've seen it with my eyes. But some people in eastern part of Russia, western part of Russia, I'm sorry, they sometimes can refer to places that are like not very developed as Shanghai, which is just so far away from reality. It's so, I learned it, I was so surprised. I did not understand what they referred to until they explained to me. So there's a big work to be done with such stereotypes. You need to do a lot of effort. You need to put a lot of effort in explaining and doing it very, it needs a lot of work. It's not just like one post about this is not that and this is not this and the stereotype is gone. It's a lot of work.
And in that process, you have also learned to look at things from a different perspective, I guess.
Well, yeah, of course. It really helped studying in China, of course, and learning the language. So it gives you better understanding about how you can talk about these stereotypes. Like Maura was talking about how for example, Economist portrays, and me as a person who lived in China, it's really painful sometimes to read those articles because they are just so, you can see people who wrote these articles don't speak the language. They haven't been living in China long enough to explain why is this happening. They have this very far away from reality kind of perspective.
Mm-hmm. Anybody, or shall I call upon you to speak one after another, or if you would like to volunteer? I can't?
Thank you. I think I will talk about repetition. And one thing I've learned is, and this is where the Western media continues to dominate, is that they have multiple platforms where they repeat the same message that it becomes a truth to the audience. And we in the Global South also have to learn and build a diversity of platforms, a diversity of authors, a diversity of commentators that can speak and deliver the message so that the audience picks it up on different platforms in different ways. We see a message delivered in a movie, then it's repeated to us in a song, then it's repeated to us on a radio program, then the message is repeated to us in a newspaper. So for us in the Global South as well, we have to learn to diversify how we deliver our message to our audience. We can't only want to write an academic paper. We should take that message also to a movie. We should take that message to a song. We should also take that message to a book, to a radio program, to a TV program, have a diversity of authors speaking on that topic in different ways. And that is how we'll win the communication and information war. Thank you.
Anybody? Ms. Yang? Okay. Evelyn, first. Yeah.
I believe the most important aspect is to tell the stories, the life stories, the stories of pain. Very often we do not have enough awareness of the impact that it can have to observe, to see the pain of others. For instance, right now we are all witnessing the crisis in Gaza, and it's incredible. Most of the media, when you try to access a video in Gaza, there's an incredible amount of restrictions for instance, no, this video is for all people older, age over 18. They find different ways, different tools to make it impossible to access that content. But I believe that the only way in which we will be able to win the war of communication is to tell the stories no one wants to tell and go into the places no one wants to visit. It's very easy to tell a story of a beautiful place, stories of development, stories of good things. I don't think that is a challenge of the Global South. I think our goal is also to expose and denounce the stories of people who are suffering hunger, who are being attacked, being bombed, those who are in a process of migration, who are in danger, who are with their families endangering themselves for migration, the things that lead them to migrate. What are the causes that push people to leave a country? They are escaping from war. Those are the stories we need to tell. And that is the only way. Because right now, we see the Western media will only invisibilize this. They will not discuss these issues.
Let me chip in here. Okay, as a devil's advocate, these are the questions that I think about also very often. I can talk about repetition. You talk about bringing the suffering or exposing, reporting on the suffering. But you know, if you're watching social media, people don't want to watch bloody scenes. People don't want to hear the same things repeated. Honestly, I can't. As a journalist, it is my lifetime passion not to repeat myself. But I know you're talking about a different kind of repetition. You're not saying repeating the same sentences, but the same sentences in different platforms, expressed in, but the central message is the same. You have to repeat that. And yet, it's a very difficult struggle when you're trying to go out of your echo chamber and have more people watch you. To talk about Gaza, for instance, there is a fatigue. It's very sad to say, but there is a fatigue when you talk too much of suffering, of crying children, of children bleeding after a certain amount of time. People just don't want to watch it. That is a very cruel reality we in the media have to face with. So I do not know if there is any way that we can do this fight without evoking fatigue, that we can continuously grab people's attention and send that central message repeatedly but differently. Okay, Mr. Tang. Okay.
I would like to respond to Candy and also to Evelyn. I would like to just offer some evidence-based information based on our research. First of all, truth is nuanced. It is not black and white. It can only be obtained when there is flow of information. While a lot of the media representatives, they say that they focus on spreading the truth, but truth is also incremental. Truth is part of a journey. And Evelyn, you talked about how we need to not just tell pleasant stories, we also need to tell people's pain. If you look at the content preference that we see now, we also need to be aware of the stratification. And that means that we need different types of content in our communication. For example, we heard from two representatives of international communication research institutes in China. They talk about how these wholesome, positive stories have their value and their influence. Having said that, given the current situation, we also need other types of storytelling. Other types of stories need to get out, and that can enrich our ecosystem, and that can also enable association, and they can also complement each other. For example, stories of pain, stories of suffering. In light of these stories, we can tell the China story of how we emerged from suffering, how we emerged from difficulties, and that can help inspire and give ideas to the people who are currently suffering. So all of these stories, they form a network of an organic whole. They achieve this complementarity.
Perspective. Mauro, you wanted to chip in here.
You ask about what we learn that is valuable to think about fighting the monopoly. So one thing that I think is money, resources, like to make communication, popular communication, counter-hegemonic communication, it takes time and a lot of effort. So that's one thing that I learned. But I wanted to say that even with the resources, it's not enough. We see a lot of projects and of initiatives that don't necessarily are successful just because they have some resources. But this is one thing I think is a challenge for us in the Global South to come up with projects that are sustainable in a financial way. This is one of the things. The other thing is, I think we have to fight back.
Do you want to go into a bit more specifics when you say financially more sustainable? Do you have something in your mind that you would like people to pay more attention to because they are financially more sustainable?
I think in our experience, we have only like the state medias in our countries, and some popular projects, and we are always relying on ourselves, on the trade unions, and I think to share experiences among us, how we make like a little resources to keep on our projects is one of the things that we should work more. I mean, within the Global South countries, and especially I think within Latin American countries. The other thing is like to fight back the hegemonic media, because that's why I mentioned the Economist. I think for a long time, these media always pose themselves like the holders of the truth. And I think more and more people are willing to understand that that is not the case. That's why in Latin America, for instance, there's more and more people that are not trusting like anymore the big media. And one of the things is because it's becoming evident what is their role. So I think we should expose more and more. And the other thing is, close to this one, is to radicalize ourselves. This is one thing that I think is important, especially for us in Latin America. Because if you are being on the fence on different topics, I think people are tired of it as well. So for instance, in the United States, you have like more than 60% of people that are against, they are in favor of the ceasefire in Gaza. But still the media and the government didn't pay attention. So I think people are getting more and more tired, and they're relying on the social media, and that is a new problem for us. Here in China, it's not a problem because you have your own social media. But in the rest of the Global South, we have a huge problem, not ahead already, because social media are replacing the traditional media. But the power is not being replaced. Even worse, is being held by less and less people. So this is going to be a huge challenge for us in the Global South. How we come up with other tools that are not held by the billionaires of the world. Thank you.
When you talk about radicalize, you know, do you mean that we need to be more aggressive or more innovative, more spearheading in terms of our pursuit to set for the ability to set the agenda, to be among the trending topics?
Well, I don't think that we need to be aggressive necessarily, but to be truthful. So if there's a bombing in hospitals and people and kids are being slaughtered in Palestine, we should like make the emphasis to transmit that idea, you know. And I don't think that our media in Latin America transmit exactly what is happening, for instance, in Palestine. So that's, I mean, by radicalize, just actually is to be more truthful to the reality, to extract the truth from the facts, to quote Chinese word.
Okay. Ms. Chen, I see you wanted to chip in here.
Actually, I have a very interesting story to share with you when we worked with a Western media company years before. So I think it's a very interesting story. So because that time we are working together a documentary called China's Challenge. So we work with an American production company. So that documentary was aimed to broadcast on PBS. So when the producer came into our office, he was, he has some stereotype because he saw all of our directors are female. He told me, I remember very clearly that I think all females should be at home in China. That's a true story. But so every time when we have a brainstorming conference, so we debate from time to time. We try to discuss. We have different opinion. But I think we actually bring him on the spot to see the truth happening in China. So I think. To me, I think we should have our, professionalism and to win the respect. That's my experience to working with Western media. And then I think the final result is very good because we won actually Emmy Awards that year. So which I want to share is we should, try to talk, try to communicate with media from Western country, but once we actually come to the same conclusion, that process is the way we solve the problem. That's maybe the best way to communicate with them, but not only to debate.
Not necessarily a confrontational relationship, but also a cooperative relationship. See, that's why this issue is so complex. There are so many different elements, 200 regions and different cultures and general feelings as well among the general public. Ms. Yang, you wanted to say something. Why don't you share with us your thoughts? And then Mr. Lee, 李准，一会儿你也跟大家分享您的想法，好不好？ After that, we'll have one last round of closing remarks. Everybody wants to do sentences, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. Well, I would like to talk from my own experience in international communication. I think at the end, it is about a conflict or a competition of values. That is the key challenge for Chinese media. Well, the Chinese New Year is almost upon us. Last year, we struggled with the translation of the Year of the Dragon, Year of the Long. Well, actually, this change in how we choose a long versus dragon, that also reflects conflicts or changes in value. Our bosses wanted a different word than dragon because dragon seems like something evil in the Western context. We also wanted to perhaps use a different color than red because that looks maybe a little too aggressive for the Western audience, whereas green is the color of sustainability. So when we do international communication, we are communicating to the ordinary people. We are talking to a general public, and sometimes we run across these competing values because we think that something is good, but they do not see it that way, or they think that your story is good, but we cannot make it work in our country. We cannot replicate it. There is also another concept that I came across a few days ago, and it is about, for example, desk reporting. And this is about, also AI-assisted reporting without actually visiting the scene of news. We did a conference in May, and we invited foreign journalists to China. A lot of these journalists have been covering China for years without ever having visited China. So I thought that perhaps a lot of these reporters, they reported from their own desk without knowing what happens on the ground, and that can generate huge gaps. So we talked about cooperation, we talked about unity. And I think that for countries of the global south, such as Brazil, such as Cuba, we have to better share our reporting. We should spread our news stories on each other's news platforms because we don't always have the money to send foreign correspondents to another country. We usually rely on the media reporting of a media outlet of another country to know about another country. So that's important. Collaboration is important. Mr. Lee.
So since I entered the media industry in the past 20 to 30 years, the most profound feeling that I have is that it's hard for me to imagine that after my graduation from college that our media has transformed from traditional media to new media, and in the future it might enter the age of artificial intelligence. And all these transformational changes, this is something that I find very impressive. So we need to deal with these changes and follow the changes. Another thing that's important for us is that Chinese people like to sing karaoke. So when we do international communication, when we do news reporting, we cannot, do it like in a karaoke style. We cannot just entertain ourselves. We need to focus on our audience. We're not catering to the audience, so there's a difference between that. But audience is very important for us because, especially when the internet provides such a wide space, because one of our colleagues earlier showed that there were a lot of comments on your news. So this is feedback from the audience. New media has given you this possibility, so you need to constantly adapt to the changes in the audience. So if the Global South countries can provide information flow in our cooperation, then I think we need to also make sure that we all have this awareness of the audience. By doing that, we can achieve that, achieve great success.
The word flow, you just talked about information flow as well. Mr. Tang talked about flow. Actually, just over the past few days, I was watching Chinese social media and I came across the term flow in psychology, 浮流, 心流. I don't know whether you've heard that expression. To me, it was totally new. And I thought it captured the state of mind that we as journalists could try to attain when we're doing communication, mass communication. That is when I'm doing a story, when I'm telling a story, I'm opening up my heart to my interviewee, and thus my audience can see me, can be with me as one, can be with us as one. Whichever topic we're talking about, I put my heart in it. And somehow, I believe somehow the audience feels it. And when that is done, whichever topic I talk about, I can feel that the messages are heard. I know it is an uphill battle. It's going to probably take decades, if not longer, till we can be on equal footing with our Western counterparts. But I believe if we do every story with our heart in there, it is going to make a far-reaching influence. At least that's how I plan to do this job in the years to come. So as we wrap up, let us each leave our last word here for this session discussion. Sophia, keep it really short, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers of this panel. It was very much insightful, like I said in my first statement. A lot of ideas, a lot of interesting thoughts. I would like to maybe continue a little more, but just to share an idea so speaking of what we've discussed here today, I think my main new idea would be that we have to make it fun, even when it comes to fatigue, even when it comes to suffering. We have to keep audience involved, so we have to find a way to make it fun for them, even when it's not very much fun to watch what we want them to know. So this is a very insightful, there has been a very insightful panel. Thank you very much. Thank you. And
make it engaging, you mean? Yeah. Okay, Mr. Lee.
So I also agree this lady's comment. Just now, I talked about we need to have the awareness of the audience. So you need to make the audience interested in your content. My last feeling is that we need to be consistent. We need to adhere to it. If we believe that we're on the right path and right direction and right method, then we need to stick to it, and it takes a long time for us to reach our ultimate goal and ultimate effect. So in this process, there might be back and forth, but if you know that your target is ideal, and then if you think your dream can be achieved, then you should be willing to take more time to achieve your ultimate goal. So we need to have endurance and perseverance.
Thank you. I think in closing, I'd just like to remind us and remind ourselves that in the Global South, unlike what we are taught in journalism school, of a story should only have the 5 W's, the what, when, where, we should also look at the why. And we should build a media apparatus and a communication and information apparatus that is there to liberate us, to take us to a place where we as our countries become sovereign. So I think that is important, and that becomes the core of why we want to build a media apparatus, an information apparatus, and communication. The core is sovereignty, and we should remember that.
Thank you. Mauro?
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you for the invitation, and I think one of the paths we should follow as media outlets of the Global South is to continue on with the spirits of the construction of the BRICS and to continue with this feeling of multipolarity. A lot of countries in Latin America are joining or coming together with this idea of multipolarity. Many countries in Latin America want to be part of the BRICS, and I think that this also needs to be transferred to media outlets. Our media needs to interact a lot more among ourselves, stop looking at the agenda of the Global North, and start to see what each one of us is doing, exchange experiences as, for instance, in this case, what we are doing right now. I believe that this kind of initiative is essential, and that's it. Thank you very much.
谢谢. Thank you. Yang, Ms. Yang.
Thank you for organizing this platform. And I hope that I have a small suggestion. After today's panel, maybe next year, maybe we can have a exchange platform for the media so that we can exchange our idea and we can share our news. So this is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Evelyn.
you.
I believe that the most important of this forum is to leave here with new perspective and to think about the work that we do from our hearts, from the truth, from what it is that we want to share, what is the message that we want to convey. Because we can't continue thinking about communication in dehumanizing ways to just have things happen and believe that people can continue being indifferent to what's taking place. So I think we need to find a way to convey a message that can reach people, can sensitize them. Otherwise, we would be alone in this war, just trying to position ourselves in reference to the Global South. So that is, I think, the objective. And build alliances among media outlets and see what way we can find to diversify cooperation beyond what we already have. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chen, please.
The Global South has the most populous nations and audience and viewership on this planet. So how does so many stand a chance not only to survive but to thrive on these challenging times? I think our cooperation will be a mirror, for both us to see ourselves and to see yourselves. So it's a very good, start for, cooperation.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Tang.
Okay, so humans have entered into information access era. At the same time, we are also encountering a lot of information obstacles. For example, many countries in the world, they received messages of hatred and misunderstanding, and people might have this swollen recognition of information. Many people believe that they are better than others. They don't realize who they are. They think they know things, but they don't. So this actually helped the spread of hatred, and it led to the confrontation between different countries as well. So this is a huge issue for the humankind. Even though we have internet, but the Babylonian Tower effect has been amplified. So I think Global South media are sitting here, and our responsibility is not only about telling good stories in your own countries. What's more important is to safeguard truth. Just as Professor Liu said, we need to go beyond the Cold War, and we need to build information communication order that benefits
Thank you so much,
mankind.
Professor Tang. And with that, we come to the live streaming of this media session on the Global South and Global Modernization Forum. So much I have learned, and thank you so much for sharing with us your unique insights. I'm sure we'll continue to learn from each other, to exchange expertise, and take more actions to reinforce each other so that we can be better, stronger, reach more people, not in a confrontational way, but in a cooperative way, probably. But when we have to fight, we're going to fight. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. That's it from me. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Liu Xing and to all of our panelists and our commentators on this very fascinating panel on the new information and communication order for the Global South. I think one thing is that China's international communication was really learned through decades of a process that really began